Good morning and welcome to CII's webinar this morning on energy efficiency improvement in Indian industry. My name is Kiran Anand. I work with the CII's Sorabji Godrej Green Business Center at Hyderabad, and I handle the energy efficiency and climate change related initiatives of this center. The agenda of this presentation is to take you through some of the initial slides on the importance of energy conservation, briefly describe about some of the policy interventions that are happening in India on energy efficiency. Primarily, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency's Perform, Achieve and Trade scheme. Explore or understand the kind of energy variations that are happening among the sectors that are participating in the first cycle of the Perform, Achieve and Trade scheme. And then to briefly take you through one of the initiatives of CII, which looks at promoting world-class energy efficiency in the Indian industry. This looks at how certain industries have achieved exceedingly high levels of energy efficiency levels compared to many of their peers in the same sector, in the cluster, or within the country. So there were several differences that CII has observed over a period of time on why certain companies are able to achieve excellence while others are not. And this presentation basically summarizes the findings of that study. And finally, summing up on what the designated consumers or other consumers of energy efficiency should be looking at in their pursuits for improving or enhancing their energy efficiency levels. With this introduction, a very quick slide on the importance of energy conservation. This is something which we have understood well. Of course, there is a significant deficit in the power scenario, and it is getting worse right now, at least in the summer and the fallout months, where several states are experiencing significant energy deficit. Last year, the average energy deficit was about 8.5%. The peak deficit was about 9.8%. There were two major policy interventions that the Government of India has introduced. One is the Electricity Act. The other is the Energy Conservation Act. And all this, if compared with the greenhouse gas emission scenario of the country, the India GHG emissions profile, which was released by the Ministry of Environment and Forest in the year 2007, indicates that the average emission per capita is roughly about 1.5 tons of carbon dioxide in the year 2007. But again, that has been the latest release of the Government of India available. Subsequently, there has been a commitment by the Prime Minister of India representing the country, where the Government of India has announced an emission intensity reduction target of 20 to 25% over the 2005 levels by the year 2020. In line with this commitment, the Prime Minister of India has also released the National Action Plan on Climate Change, which is basically a document which defines the government's action to achieve or direct its activities towards a sustainable development path. The two major initiatives or the policy acts that have come up in the recent times was the Electricity Act that came up in 2003. The prime objective was to transform and develop the electricity sector by, of course, as it is defined, by distancing government from the task of regulation. And a couple of years before that was the Energy Conservation Act, which had a primary objective of facilitating and enforcing energy efficient use of energy and its conservation, prescribe energy consumption norms and standards for certain designated consumers. The National Action Plan on Climate Change had several activities spread across 8 national missions. The 8 national missions were the National Solar Mission, National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency, National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, Water Mission, Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem, Green India, Sustainable Agriculture, and Strategic Knowledge on Climate Change, which looks at the knowledge management initiatives within the country. Among this, we would be discussing a little more on the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency and a couple of policy interventions that came out as a fallout of this mission. The basic objective of the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency was to ensure a sustainable growth by ensuring an appropriate mix of the 4 E's as they are defined, the 4 E's being energy, efficiency, equity, and environment. It is also aimed at promoting development objectives while also yielding co-benefits which addresses the climate change and meets or helps in meeting the country's emission reduction target. One of the initiatives also was to develop a market-based approach which would unlock the significant energy efficiency opportunity that exists within the country, and the estimate has been to the tune of about 74,000 crores of rupees, which would come in through market-based interventions on energy efficiency within India. As a short-term target, by 2014-15, the annual fuel savings or the energy savings expected out of the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency was about 23 million tons of oil equivalent. This in turn would avoid electricity capacity addition close to about 19,000 megawatt and would also help in reducing the greenhouse gas emission by close to about 100 million tons per year. These are sizable numbers, very big number to even consider discussing on this. As a fallout of the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency was the mechanism called Perform, Achieve and Trade. This has been released early this year. The notification on the targets have been released on 31st of March 2012. 2012 to 15 is the first cycle for the Perform, Achieve and Trade mechanism, which has been released by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Ministry of Power, Government of India. The salient features of this mechanism are, first, it is a market-based mechanism. This mechanism aims at providing additional incentives for companies who improve energy efficiency beyond their targeted values, improves the cost economics for energy efficiency projects through a market-based mechanism, and thereby increasing the profitability of companies who are able to achieve much higher levels than what they are mandated to. This would definitely benefit the industry irrespective of where their present levels of efficiency are. This is not only for industries who are already very highly efficient. This scheme is equally applicable for companies which are not so efficient right now, but can take significant efforts to become more efficient and thereby make use of this market-based mechanism. Ultimately, the objective is to create a very healthy competition on energy efficiency across the industry, because the certificates are tradable across sectors. It is not only one sector which becomes better because of this market-based mechanism. The certificates are tradable across sectors, and therefore it is anticipated to create a healthy competition across all sectors of the country and ultimately facilitate in natural resource conservation. The first cycle of the PAT sector covers 8 sectors. The sectors that you see on the left side of the screen, the first PAT cycle has close to about 478 DCs, or as they're known as designated consumers. The sectors which are included in the first cycle are thermal power plants, cement, fertilizer, iron and steel, aluminium, pulp and paper, textile, and chlor-alkali sectors. These sectors have 478 companies or facilities which have a minimum threshold of energy consumption as defined by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. The minimum threshold of energy efficiency is this. Any of the companies in these sectors which have a minimum energy consumption of 30,000 tons of oil equivalent or more would be categorized as a designated consumer. Apart from certain sectors like textile, where the energy consumption limit has been lower, majority of the sectors have a minimum threshold value of 30,000 tons of oil equivalent per annum, and there were about 478 companies who were in the first PAT cycle. Now, with the first PAT cycle already ongoing, there is also a discussion on what should be the energy intensive sectors which should be considered for the second PAT cycle. The first PAT cycle would be for the duration of 2012 to 15. The second path cycle would begin from the financial year 2015 and would go until 2018. And to bring more companies under the ambit, there are several sectors which are currently under discussion. Chemicals, other than petrochemical, which includes chemicals, bulk drug, pharmaceutical. This is one sector which is being considered. Automobile is definitely another energy consumer which is being considered for the second path cycle, which could include 2, 3 and 4-wheeler manufacturers. Dairy and dairy products, because of their large heating and cooling requirements. Beverages and distilleries, again because of their large heating and cooling requirements. Glass and ceramics, very high fuel consumers. Sugar sector, other metals like copper and zinc, and vegetable oil refineries. These are certain sectors which are under consideration but has not been mandated yet. Studies are going on to see their energy efficiency levels, the total energy consumption, and what could be the impact if these sectors are brought in into the next path cycle. So currently there are 8 sectors, but this number of 8 sectors is gradually on an increase. In the current cycle, out of the 23 million tons of oil equivalent which is anticipated reduction out of the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency, the PATH scheme is anticipated to contribute 10 million metric tons of oil equivalent reduction. The other 13 million tons of oil equivalent reduction is expected from other programs of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, such as standards and labeling, the performance guarantee funds, and other programs which would contribute to the balance 13 million metric tons of oil equivalent reduction. The PATH scheme is expected to reduce 10 million tons of oil equivalent of energy consumption. This 10 million tons of oil equivalent energy consumption, which is taken as a target for the PAT mechanism, has been apportioned to individual sectors based on their current levels of energy consumption. So it has been more of a top-down approach. Based on the current levels of energy consumption of the sector, this 10 million metric tons of oil equivalent target has been apportioned to individual sectors. And within the sectors, individual units have been given specific targets to help the sector as a whole achieve the target mandated. So this is how the distribution of the energy consumption among the various sectors, their share of consumption, and the apportioned energy reduction is. For example, the total energy consumption of all the 8 sectors put together is 164 million tons of oil equivalent. And this 164 million tons is expected to reduce by 9.78 million tons. So 478 companies in these 8 sectors consume 164 million tons of oil equivalent, among which the power sector has been the highest. Power sector consumes nearly about 63% of the overall energy consumption, which is about 104 million tons of oil equivalent, and out of which this sector is mandated to reduce their energy consumption by 6.2 million tons of oil equivalent. Iron and steel sector, which consumes about 17% of the overall share of energy, has a mandate to reduce 1.67 million tons of oil equivalent. And similarly, all the other sectors have been apportioned based on their current levels of total energy consumption. So each unit within this sector has been allocated target depending on how their current levels of performance are. For example, if we look at, say, cement sector, this sector on an average has a 7% consumption, and within which there has been a wide variation between the least efficient and the most efficient cement plant in the country. The most efficient cement plant has a target of about 3%, and the least efficient cement plant has a target of about 8%. So individual units, depending on their relative ranking within the sector, have been allocated targets for reduction in the first cycle of the PAT mechanism. During the data collection of the baseline period, which is the years of 2007 to 10, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has analyzed the data and has found out that there is a huge variation within the sectors. For example, if you look at the fertilizer sector, the variation in energy consumption has been from 5.86 gcal per ton of urea to 9.11 gcal per ton of urea. the difference is nearly about 70% or 70 to 75% higher than the least energy consumer. Similarly, in integrated steel, the variation has been from 6.15 Gcal per TCS to 8.18 Gcal. Sponge iron, it has been nearly about double the difference, 72 kilowatt hour per ton to 135 kilowatt hour per ton. In pulp and paper, the variation has been huge. Again, depending on the types of products that are made, the types of technology used, the size of the unit, and so on. But the variation has been observed within the sector from 25 gigajoules per ton to 121 gigajoules per ton, nearly about 5 times the minimum energy consumption. Textile, again, depending on the type of textile that is manufactured, the size, the scale of operation, the variation of energy has also been significant. The energy variation has been from 3,000 kilocalories per kilogram to about 16,000 kilocalories per kilogram. While some of these sectors within the country house the most energy efficient units anywhere in the world, there are several of the units which are among the least efficient units as well. So the difference is varying anywhere between, say, 40% between the minimum and the maximum to about 400 to 500% as well. Now, this is one of the reasons why the targets for individual sectors have also been varying. The best performer in each sector gets the least target. The least energy efficient company in the sector gets a high target, and the sector as a whole aspires to achieve these energy reduction targets at the end of the first PAT cycle. As you may be aware, the first PAT cycle begins from 2012. And the assessment period is the financial year of 2014-15. So 2012-13 and 13-14 are 2 years which have been given for various companies in these sectors to achieve the target. The target value should be achieved by the financial year of 14-15, which would be considered as the assessment year. The baseline year has been the average of 3 years, the baseline period being the financial years of 2007 to 10. The energy consumption of the 3 years of the baseline period has been averaged, and the targets have been given based on that average, and the reduction will be verified in the assessment year of 2014-15. So by the end of 2015 financial year, the estimated reduction which would arrive out of the PAT mechanism is 9.78, and within the sector, the targets are given for everyone. The least energy consumer gets a low target, the highest energy consumer gets a higher target, and this target is based on their previous performance. So this is a continuous evolving benchmark, and therefore there is no sectoral benchmarking that is done. The previous performance of the company becomes its benchmark for further improvement. Now, when these levels of energy efficiency were analyzed within a sector and even across several other sectors within the country, there have been certain characteristics that has been driving certain companies in the sectors to pursue very high levels of energy efficiency, or what we call as world-class energy efficiency. Some of the companies in India stand out as the best in the world, either in sectors like fertilizer or sectors like cement or steel. Companies in India have the lowest energy consumption in the world. But the same sector has other companies where the consumption has been much higher. Now, when we looked at the characteristics of, this has been a study which is carried out by CII. This study has been done for about 5 to 6 years, analyzing the characteristics of various excellent energy efficient companies who have achieved significantly high levels of performance, high levels of energy efficiency, to analyze the reasons for that. And one of the things that we noticed was these companies don't have anything which is significantly different from others. When we started comparing the best or the world-class units, obviously their comparison was with the good units which have achieved certain levels of efficiency, but the world-class units which have achieved exceedingly high levels of efficiency. When this comparison was made between the best in the sector vis-a-vis the good plants in the sector, to an outward view, both of them appeared same. Both of them had very high levels of energy efficiency awareness. Significant energy saving was achieved in both the units. For example, the the best ranker and the second ranker in the sector also had several features which are common. But the units which are world-class energy efficient had certain characteristics and traits which were unique and different. This has been a part of the system, a part of the company, a part of their management style. But before I go into the characteristics, the definition of a world-class energy efficient unit has been based on these criteria. These companies are observed to be trendsetter in norms. They operate with energy consumption which could be the lowest in the country or the lowest in the world. These companies have been leaders in implementing latest technologies. Energy improvement or avoiding energy wastage is a continuous process, but these companies have achieved certain levels of saturation. As far as energy wastage is concerned, there has been no visible energy wastage that has been observed. They had very innovative mechanisms for analyzing or examining the performance on energy efficiency. They had certain energy scorecards, which we will talk about it as we move along. Energy conservation has not been a one-time activity. It has been an ongoing activity. It has become a part of the management system itself in certain companies that makes it a significant differentiator compared to others. In the next 6 slides, you will see certain characteristics or certain parameters on which the good or the world-class units have been compared. On the left side, you will find how the good unit would react to the same situation. On the right side, you would find how a world-class unit would react. And these are not technical in nature. We have found that the technology is open, the technology is common for good and the world-class companies. The technology providers are same. The knowledge on technology is equally common, or it is open. So technology is not something which is playing a differentiator. Whatever technology is available to a good unit is also equally available to a world-class unit. But then we realize that there are certain inherent properties, certain managerial properties within these companies that brought the difference. For example, the first parameter for comparison has been on benchmarking or trend setting. Any good unit, based on their historical performances or based on the analysis of how they pursued the energy efficiency endeavors, the observation was the good units always followed benchmarks. They looked at who is the lowest in the country, they looked at who is the lowest in the world, and then tried to see what are the steps and measures which this company should take to either meet the benchmark or reduce the gap between the benchmark value and their value. On the other hand, when we look at certain companies who have been trendsetters, these companies did not look at benchmarks. When they were looking at designing a new system, designing a new complex, or designing a new factory, they started looking at what could be the theoretical minimum that is required for operating, rather than looking at what are the benchmarks in the sector. Of course, each of these characteristics are supplemented with certain examples, and one of the example which we quoted here was of the cement industry, where when the average energy consumption of the cement industry in the late 1990s was about 100 to 105 kilowatt hour per ton of cement, a new unit which came up in South India did not look at the current levels of benchmark, but looked at breaking down the entire operations and seeing what could be the theoretical minimum that is possible. And when they broke it down, discussed with the suppliers, chose the best of the technology, while the average at that time was about 105 kilowatt hour per ton, the best in the sector was about 90 kilowatt hour per ton. This company could establish or could come up with a new factory which started with energy consumption of less than 70 kilowatt hour per ton. It was significantly lower than the best unit which was existing at that point in time, and therefore this became a new benchmark. And for the last about 15 years, this became a benchmark for the entire sector to follow, and the sector achieved a very significant reduction in the average energy consumption, and probably this made the Indian cement industry today one of the best in the world. The next parameter for comparison has been on the information sharing. Information sharing has been equally understood by good and best units. sharing of information, as it is said, is the most cost-effective way of learning. Learning by sharing is the most cost-effective way of learning, where one company need not have to reinvent whatever others have done. Information sharing is also good in the good units, but the sharing has been largely within the company, or maybe to some extent within the various divisions of the group. It has been more operating in isolation. While the importance of sharing has been understood, the speed at which it is shared is not as it is in the world-class companies. The speed at which information is shared in the world-class companies has been exceedingly fast. Certain companies like Coca-Cola, Philips, and several other companies which have global presence share information within a few hours or days of successful implementation in one location anywhere in the world. As Coca-Cola says, any of their successful project implemented in one of their bottling units anywhere in the world gets shared with all the other bottling units within a span of 2 working days. Now, the relevance of this project to any other bottling unit anywhere in the world may or may not exist. For example, a project which is successful in one of their bottling units in Palakkad may not be applicable for a bottling unit in France or in any other part of the world. But this information is shared. The information is shared so that any day this becomes relevant. All the information that is required for successful implementation is readily available. So the speed at which information is shared becomes another very, very significant differentiator between a good and a world-class unit. The third comparison was on implementation of latest technologies. The good unit has been open or has been willing for certain latest technologies, but as many of us would ask, the first question that they were asking is, where is it implemented earlier? Is there any other company who has done this? If they have, what is the success rate? And if it is successful elsewhere, I am ready to implement. I am ready to consider my plant for implementing this technology. But before that, please come to me with proven technologies and please tell me which are the case studies that you have before coming to my plant for implementation. Whereas on the other hand, the world-class companies, there are several examples of such installations where even the companies have challenged the OEMs and have taken a huge amount of both technological as well as the organizational risk in many cases, and have emerged as pioneers in implementation. These are companies who are not averse to taking risk, but this risk has been out of a series of brainstorming sessions, a series of internal discussions, deliberations, backed up with very, very strong scientific and technical evaluation, and the organization as a whole becomes open for taking that risk at the highest level. Of course, the success or failure would determine whether this unit would fall as a guinea pig or as a pioneer. But with such a huge backup of technical, scientific, and several brainstorming sessions that happen, in more cases than one, these companies emerge as pioneers in implementation. They have the capacity to take risk at the organization level, and over a period of time, become the technology developer's first preference. Any technology developer anywhere in the world, having seen this organization's capability to take risk, comes to this organization first with any new technology that they want to try out. Now, here again, there have been several examples. When one of the units went ahead with the first installation of a high tension variable frequency drive, the supplier had met with several companies in that sector, asking them to try the HT variable frequency drive for one of their very big fan applications. And many of the units were asking the supplier, please give me a successful case study. The idea is very good, the product is innovative, the company is good, but please give me a case study of 1 or 2 installations. I will be immediately ready to implement it in my plant. When the supplier went to 10 organizations, all the 10 organizations were asking the supplier, please give me 1 case study, I will be the second man to implement. So finally, the supplier had 10 companies who are ready to be the second company to implement, but didn't have anyone who is the first to implement. And all these 10 companies wanted 1 case study. When one company was interested in taking the risk, having analyzed it and gone ahead with implementing this technology in one of their plants. But the cost was one of the limiting factors. The technology provider had given the HTVFD at 40% of his quoted price to have his first case study done. The technology provider was there with the plant until the case study was successful, made sure that this case study was recorded, was analyzed, and was also implemented by providing the technology at a very, very low cost to the first unit. Now, the first technology was successful. The first implementation was very, very successful, gave much higher results than what it was anticipated. And then the news spread. When the news spread and several other companies were ready to implement it, obviously the technology supplier had one successful case study, and he had many other companies who were willing. And obviously the price was also something which went up. For the second, third, and fourth companies, the price of the HTVFD was actually slightly higher than the first, because now that the savings are proven, the technology is established, the price, even at a higher price, the cost or the savings was attractive for the investment to get recovered back. So what happens is the cost advantage which the first company had got, the supplier tries to recover whatever money has been notionally lost from the first company with the second, third, and fourth implementers. And therefore, when we look at it at a sectoral level, the good companies are actually paying a part of the money for the world-class company in a way to become better. So the good companies have been paying a part of the investment for the world-class company to become even better, therefore increasing the gap between themselves and the world-class companies. So this has been a very, very significant differentiator. We have such examples in various sectors like petrochemical, cement, fertilizer, iron and steel, where the initial implementers, the initial adopters had a significant edge compared to the subsequent adopters in the sector. Energy wastages, yes, in spite of having a significant amount of energy saving achieved, energy wastage is still visible. Somebody who is trained to look at certain areas where energy wastage can be occurring, it becomes visible in a good company, whereas in a world-class company, it is not apparent. It is extremely difficult to identify because all the energy wastage areas have been plugged well. Energy manager is existing in a good company as well, but the job of the energy manager has been more of an implementer's role, and therefore the job of the energy manager would be to go behind people, ask them to implement energy conservation proposals. One man tries to do a lot of projects by himself, and therefore the number of projects that we have seen adopting in such companies have also been limited. But there are certain energy managers in world-class energy efficient companies who have been very, very good facilitators. These energy managers don't try to do everything by themselves. They let the teams work. They let the people who are working in various sections understand the importance of energy efficiency and therefore take up energy efficiency improvement in their respective areas. Wherever there is an issue, wherever there is any external support required, wherever there is any advice or guidance required, the energy manager chips in. But this person does not try to do everything by himself. If this person tries to do everything by himself, then the maximum number of projects that can be implemented in a year becomes extremely limited. While if this person acts as a facilitator, becomes more as a catalyst in making sure that such projects happen all over the factory, we have observed that the number of projects that get implemented are significantly higher. The energy savings achieved is very, very high. And beyond a certain level, when all the conventional projects are exhausted, that is a time when the energy manager engages experts in that field who come, study the plant for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, identify all the projects that could be possible, give a report with all the projects that the team can implement, and then the energy manager will further act as a facilitator, engaging various teams which would implement it. So the speed at which the projects get implemented are higher, the number of people who are working on energy efficiency is much larger, and finally the overall energy saving achieved is substantially higher than what a good company can aspire. Energy conservation activity in a good plant had been more in spurts. It is driven largely by external factors. For example, whenever there has been an increase in energy cost, suddenly the energy conservation activity becomes paramount. Whenever there has been an increase in fuel cost or increase in the power cost, or if there are certain states or certain consumers where the mandatory energy audit is imposed, once every 3 years energy audit becomes an exercise. Whereas in a world-class unit, energy conservation becomes an ongoing activity. Top management is committed to energy conservation. And I mean, of course, somebody could ask which top management is not committed. But it is important to understand how that commitment is getting exhibited. And one of the very, very positive ways of making this energy conservation an ongoing activity is through resource allocation. One of the findings that CII team also had during our various studies was there was a huge gap or time gap between originating an idea and its successful implementation. The time gap again depends on the kind of project that is under discussion, but this gap can be anywhere between about 3 months to several years, depending on the quantum of money that it requires and the energy saving that it is anticipated. But one of the major reasons why there is a huge gap is because of the availability of resources or largely money that goes in investment for achieving the savings. On the other hand, certain companies have practiced what is known as a resource allocation for energy efficiency at the beginning of the year. For example, one of the units has been given about 2 crores of money at the beginning of the year to be spent on energy efficiency projects. The job of the energy manager and the team is to make sure that the 2 crores of money is spent in that financial year within certain broad mandates. Broad mandates like the payback period of project should be less than 2 years. There should not be a significant amount of shutdown time. This should not result in any loss in output and so on. Within these broad mandates, money is given at the beginning of the year for the energy manager to identify projects and utilize the money. Now, the first year when such a resource is available and the job of the energy manager is to implement projects, it becomes very easy. All the low-hanging fruits are first identified, attended to, all these projects are implemented. Now, the first year the energy manager utilizes this money that is given to him, but at the end of the first year or the beginning of the next year, again an equivalent amount of money is given. And the job of the energy manager would be to spend that money. Now, all the conventional projects or the low-hanging projects are already completed. The job of the energy manager becomes slightly tougher. The energy manager would then have to identify projects which do not or which still meets the broader guidelines but are not conventional. And therefore, the second year the job becomes slightly more difficult. Then, if the second year also he manages to consume the resources that is allocated, again an equivalent amount of resources allocated in the third year. And that is where all the standard projects are over and we find the world-class companies looking desperately for any successful idea in any part of the sector or beyond it. Today, the companies are not looking at within their sector, but also looking at several of the other sectors to look at what innovative practices they have done to implement. For example, people from cement sector are visiting chemical sector companies to understand the extent of waste heat recovery that has happened in these companies. People from power plants are visiting cement plants to understand the amount of energy efficiency activities that have gone in terms of making their fans more efficient. People from power sector are visiting certain very good paper plants and sugar plants to understand a very, very good stream management practices which has been done in these sectors. So the ideas are not limited to certain sectors, and whenever there is a pressure on resource allocation and the energy manager's job becomes more in terms of spending the resources, one, the time gap gets reduced, more projects can be implemented without waiting for the resources to be made available, and at the end of the year, a larger savings is achieved through this approach. And wherever this approach has been adopted, we have seen a significantly larger uptake of projects implementation. Another very significant differentiator has been in terms of monitoring of energy efficiency. Monitoring is important, and energy efficiency activities always gets further boost and fill up if the data is available. As long as the monitoring is not effective, energy efficiency does not go a significant way forward. Good companies have a good monitoring system. Excellent data is generated. A lot of review happens, daily meetings, weekly meetings, and monthly meetings to review the performance of the plant. It's been very good effort. But one of the things that certain companies have observed is the daily meeting this morning to evaluate the performance of the plant yesterday was more of a analysis which is post-mortem, which is the energy consumption has already happened and the analysis is happening this morning about how the energy consumption was yesterday. This is not live. This definitely is helpful in taking corrective or preventive actions henceforth, but this does not give an opportunity to correct it instantaneously. And therefore, certain companies have adopted what is known as energy scorecards. This is more of a live indication. Wherever the energy performance of a unit has a direct bearing on individuals, wherever individuals have a significant role in the energy consumption of the plant. For example, the CCR operators, the control room operators in certain very high energy intensive sectors like power or cement or steel, this has been a pattern which has been observed. For example, if there is one shift where 3 operators have run the shift, say operator A, B and C, generally when we look at the data for one day, the performance of these 3 operators get averaged out. But what certain sectors have been looking at is to see the performance of the plant in each shift and attribute it to the operator. And when this data was analyzed for a period of 3 to 6 months, it has clearly been evident that in many of the plants, there is a difference between the performance of these 3 operators. For example, operator A has always been consistent. Operator A always consumes 5% of lesser energy than operator C. And this has been proven irrespective of whether this operator A was in day shift or night shift, whether it was a rainy season or a summer season. Over a period of time, this has been tested that operator A has been about 3 to 5% always consuming lesser energy than whenever operator C was in shift. Now, there could be several reasons for it. The reasons could be either the levels of motivation of employees or the levels of training of employees. Operator A could be well trained than operator C. Now, this has been one where several companies have understood this impact. Now, if you look at the investment for reducing this gap, there is no significant investment required. And the only investment that is required is, one, to understand that this kind of a gap exists. And secondly, for the senior team in the plant to sit with operator C and to train him well and to train him, make him more efficient, motivate him, make him reduce the gap between himself and operator A. So the investment that goes is only in terms of time, in terms of training. It does not call for any capital investment. Now, certain companies have understood that very well. For example, certain companies use this as a tool for evaluating the performance of the CCR operators. CCR operators who have always been consuming lower energy have been rewarded well, and the people who consume higher energy have been, this has been kept as a basis for their training. Now, one company in India did this study for about 3 to 4 months, understood a similar pattern. There has been about 6 months of data that is collected. The data indicated that there is about, again, 3 to 5% of variation between the 2 operators. Now, instead of using this mechanism for training, what this company did was to post it on the notice board the next day on how the energy consumption was whenever these 3 operators were in shift. So every day morning, the operator, when he goes to the shift, he sees that his energy consumption was X. The energy consumption of his colleague who was in the other shift was 0.95X. And that became a motivation for this employee to constantly keep looking at opportunities, keep looking at ways by which he could reduce the gap between himself and his colleague. And over a period of time, over the next 6 months, this was a very healthy competition. Operator A always tried to become more efficient, have maintained this gap between himself and operator C. Operator C always tries to reduce the gap between himself and operator A. And over a period of time, while this gap reduced, the energy efficiency levels of the overall plant improved significantly. And this is one example of a live data which motivates people to achieve significant levels of efficiency. Now, if we look at these 6 parameters, one thing that is evident is this does not look at technology. This does not look at capital availability. This does not look at the resources that are available. What it looks at is what should be the approach of companies if somebody is pursuing world-class levels of energy efficiency. This is more in terms of an approach for energy efficiency rather than the tools or the technologies or the application. When we looked at the participants who have registered for this webinar today, we found that we had a wide mix. This was a huge variation from glass to steel to engineering to consultants to manufacturers. So one of the things that we strongly encourage is when we have such a wide multi-sectoral diversified audience, it becomes important not to look at energy efficiency from the technology perspective, but to look at it from the approach. And as long as this approach, which has been tried, tested, and proven in so many of the world-class companies, is understood well, is implemented in any of the companies that we look at, we are sure either if one or two or all of these characteristics are imbibed in any company, it would definitely move towards achieving excellence in energy efficiency. As I said, this has been a study which was carried out by the CII Godrej Green Business Center. A quick introduction about this center. This center is located in Hyderabad, a very unique public-private partnership where with several key players like the CII, the Government of Andhra Pradesh, the USAID as a technical partner, and the Pirojsha Godrej Foundation coming together and establish this unique center. The photograph that you see is the center that is located in Hyderabad. It's located in one of the very busy areas, but still you see that the center is serenely located amongst the greenery that it portrays. This is a center of excellence for energy, environment, green buildings, renewable energy, water, and climate change activities within the country. The building that you see here also happens to be the first green building in India, the first certified green building, and the first platinum rated green building outside the US and the third building in the world. And for a period of about 2.5 years, this building also happened to be the greenest building in the world in terms of various features that this green building has adopted. This center offers various services to make the industry more competitive, world-class energy efficiency, green audits, water audits, facilitating many of the other buildings to go green. The Green Co rating, which is again, we had a webinar last week. Feel free to download it and have a look at it whenever if you are interested. Total cost management, renewable energy services, and several training programs and seminars. Energy efficiency has been one where the center has been active for nearly about 2.5 decades. Several energy audits have been carried out and several accolades have been received by this team. So just to sum up, for the PAT designated sectors, for the sectors which are currently covered under the PAT scheme that we spoke initially, CII has been strongly encouraging these companies to actively pursue the targets, achieve the targets without looking at any penalty or any shortfall mechanisms. Achieve the target, because achieving the target not only makes the company better, but over a period of time can leverage the market-based opportunities that would emerge. To achieve maximum energy savings and meet the PAT targets with minimum investment, there's again certain studies which we have been associated with various groups where we are encouraging them to go for maximum benefits, much more than the minimum target which is set by the Bureau. And also to look at PAT as one opportunity to monetize the energy benefits which they would achieve. To sum up, strongly encourage companies to look at energy efficiency as a key driver not only within their operations, but to look at this at a corporate level. Energy efficiency could be a very key driver to improve the competitiveness of various companies. We strongly encourage companies to pursue world-class energy efficiency standards. Don't look at the minimum target, don't look at benchmarks, but see what could be the lowest in the sector that is theoretically possible and keep that as a benchmark, as a target to move along. There are several voluntary and legislative measures which are going on. I'm sure you will find a lot of such information on PAT or RPO. when somebody looks at pursuing a world-class energy efficiency levels, the legislative or the mandatory measures become, could be taken as given. These become insignificant compared to the much taller or the bigger targets which a company can pursue. And anybody who's interested in CII would be glad to assist and offer its inputs. Thank you very much. Thank you. We are now open for questions, and as you might know, the questions are to be typed. The questions are to be sent to us in the pop-up that you see on your screens. You will have to type the questions there and send it. And I would read the question, read the person who has raised this question, read his question for the benefit of all, and then try to answer it. So if there are any questions from any of the audiences, please feel free. I'll be ready to answer. Okay, we have certain questions already from some of the participants. There was one question by Jal Ranjan of Ericsson. His question was, may you please forward this presentation post the webinar? We'll certainly do that. This video recording of the webinar will be available on our website. You please feel free to either view it or download it. This would be available. This was again a question asked by Pratik Das Mohapatra about the PPT. This would be available. Feel free to download it. Sarja Rao More, his question was how energy labeling can be done in case of tailor-made products. This is again a very interesting question, because right now the energy labeling is available for certain most commonly used appliances. As you might be knowing, the BEE star labeling scheme is now available for most commonly used domestic appliances such as refrigerators, air conditioners, geysers, and so on. This is currently available for 4 appliances, and Bureau of Energy Efficiency will shortly roll out the standards and labeling program for about 14 new appliances very shortly. So we will have more and more appliances which are coming in, but for specific products or tailor-made products, we still don't have a country-wide labeling program. This is again something which I think should emerge over a period of time, but we currently don't have. Another question which was asked by Mr. More was, how specific energy can be worked out when the size and value of the product varies every day? Now, this has been something which certain sectors have been encountering. Certain sectors like the automobile component manufacturers or even the automobile manufacturers. For example, one facility of an automobile plant could manufacture a 3-wheeler, a 4-wheeler, and within 4-wheelers, they could manufacture a variety of 4-wheelers like a passenger car or a SUV or a smaller SUV, bigger SUV. They might have a variety of products that roll out. What such companies have done is to arrive at what is their equivalent product. They choose one of their products which is most common, keep that as an equivalent product, and arrive at what would be the energy consumption of other products which can be compared with the equivalent product. For example, if the company has got 5 products, product A, B, C, D, and E, they consider product A as their equivalent product. Product B could have an equivalent of product A. For example, if 10 product B is manufactured, 10 numbers of product B consume equivalent energy of 7 numbers of product A, and therefore the energy consumption of the plant is denoted as an equivalent product, while individually it could vary. There was another question on, do you feel ISO 50001 will help? Definitely. ISO 50001 is a new standard for energy efficiency. This would definitely be of a lot of help. This would bring in systems and procedures in energy efficiency, and we strongly encourage companies to go ahead with ISO 50001. This is definitely a very significant push on energy efficiency initiatives in the country. There was a question by Mr. Prateek Das Mohapatra on how many companies in India have adopted technology tool for energy efficiency initiatives. See, technology is something which we think is essential. Without technology, the energy efficiency may not move significantly ahead. As you might be aware, there are three major levers that are looked at for any energy efficiency improvement. One is, of course, the capacity utilization. As long as the capacity is utilized, which is running at the design capacity or marginally higher, that is one approach for energy efficiency. The second approach for energy efficiency is fine-tuning, which is more of the low-hanging fruits and small energy efficiency retrofits and so on. But technology is essentially required if somebody is looking at a quantum jump. And with the rate at which the technology is changing, it is always essential for companies to understand what are the current best technologies available, understand or evaluate when it would be cost economical for them to adopt the new technology, and whenever it is attractive, it is essential for them to migrate from older technologies to newer technologies on a consistent basis. There was another question that was asked by Mr. Bhavsar on what about IT and software companies? Is there any study conducted, and what is a takeaway for them? Yes, we have been doing a lot of studies for IT and software companies. We have been doing it at various levels. We have been doing it in terms of the buildings, and buildings is one which would determine the amount of energy consumption of an IT company. And we have been promoting several energy efficiency and green practices in IT sector. The second thing that we have been looking at in the IT sector is the performance of data centers. CII, in partnership with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, has been looking at the performance of data centers, bringing in best practices of data centers within the country, which again is a very large, which is already a large consumer in the country and is expected to become very high energy consumer in the years down the line. So we have been active in the IT sector, and we have been looking at all aspects from the performance of the building, the performance of the equipment in the building like lighting and air conditioning, and about data centers. So we have been active in that space as well. There was one question on Mr. Krishnakant Gupta on what is the scope for deployment of latest energy efficient technology in the designated sector. Yes, we think there is a lot of potential. Right now, CII is working with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in developing technology compendiums, which would be released very shortly. These compendiums look at what are the technology interventions which can be brought in the designated consumers. And in each of the designated consumer sectors, there are at least about 20 to 30 different technologies, which, if adopted, can bring in a significant improvement in these companies. There was one question on Mr. Guha. Is there any benchmark on energy efficiency for IT industry? Well, the IT industry, as we would know, is very diverse, is very varying depending on the kind of operations. But yes, there are certain benchmarks available. One of the benchmarks has been the energy consumption benchmark. Bureau of Energy Efficiency has come up with a star rating for buildings depending on where this building is located and how much of energy it consumes. It is measured in terms of the kilowatt hour per square feet of the built space, and therefore there are certain benchmarks which are available for this sector. There was one question by Beryl Lopez. How effectively are the targets as per PAT being pursued by the sectors? Are there any examples? The targets are, the targets, as I mentioned, vary from about 2.5% for the most efficient company to about 8% to the least efficient. Now, the targets per se are challenging enough. It is not an easy target, but at the same time, it is not an impossible target. The targets are tough. the targets are, are a stretch target, but they are not something which is not achievable. They are achievable, they are stretch, and therefore it is not too easy or too difficult to achieve them. Whether any energy audit is there for IT industry by Mr. Guha? Yes, there are several of the IT companies are going for energy audits as a measure of continuously improving their performance. In fact, CII has been associated with several of the IT companies over the last few years in terms of making their operations, making their buildings, making their data centers more efficient. There's definitely an area for IT sector to pursue. How is ISO 50001 beneficial? We have addressed that. Is there any demand for technology side for sustainability information management software by Mr. Das Mohapatra? Yes. Any information that is made available in a shape and form that could be digested, analyzed, and evaluated by companies is always welcome. This is something where there is always a demand. This demand would continue, and we strongly feel any technology that could bring in the data in a format that could be read, analyzed, and acted upon is always helpful. There was a question by Mr. Raghuram. Is this PAT system mandated for all the first phase sector industries? Yes, as I mentioned, there is a minimum threshold limit. The threshold limit in many of the sectors is 30,000 tons of oil equivalent. Any company which has energy consumption of more than the minimum designated value will fall under the first cycle of the PAT system. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency would already have notified these industries in their list that was released on 31st of March. It is available in the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and Ministry of Power website. You may feel free to download that. This has a list of about 478 companies along with their current levels of energy consumption, current levels of production, and their target values. Okay, from a technology perspective, I'm just running through a few questions. Some people who have raised a question are not online right now, so I skipped those questions. There has been a question by Mr. Nitin Gaikwad on, are there any subsidies from government for solar equipment to be used in industry? The implementation of solar, to a certain extent, yes, certain states have subsidies, but beyond that, the implementation of solar or other renewable energy installations in industry is also very helpful in terms of making the industry less dependent on the fossil fuels. So while the cost of the technology has been gradually reducing, making it more cost economical today, the subsidies are also available at certain states, which makes it attractive. And even beyond subsidies, it is beneficial considering the current energy costs for industries to look at renewable energy intervention wherever it is feasible. There has been one question on what is the range of cost of PAT certificate by Karthik Balaji. Well, the notification that has been released by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has indicated the cost of 1 ton of oil equivalent. 1 ton of oil equivalent is called one energy saving certificate or one ECert. One ECert has been roughly priced at about 10,154 rupees. 10,154 rupees is the cost of 1 ton of oil equivalent, and this cost has been arrived at based on the average cost of energy of the country, considering all the sectors that have been in the first cycle, and also the average cost of investments that have gone ahead in these sectors to achieve that 1 ton of oil equivalent reduction. So if any of the designated sector consumers fall short of the targets, they would be buying the credits at a minimum value of 10,154 rupees for 1 ton of oil equivalent from other companies in the group who have exceeded the target. There was one question by Mr. Srinivas Patil on who says compressed air is one of the costly utilities. What is the permissible leakage percentage in industry? Compressed air leakage ideally should be zero, but maintaining zero is a very, very difficult task, and all of us in industry would appreciate that. Well, the minimum values have been also varying depending on the extent to which the companies have gone ahead in this endeavor. There are certain very good examples. For example, one automobile company who has the compressed air piping in their plant running for about 15 kilometers. This plant has 15 kilometers of compressed air piping within the industry, and they have an average leakage of about 4.5%. That is one of the lowest value which has been observed for such a large network of compressed air piping. 15 kilometers of compressed air piping running at 4.5% leakage should be a target value for many of them to approach and adopt. This is again something where meticulous work goes into it. This unit evaluates its leakage once every week. Every week there is a plot on what is the current level of leakage, and have been maintaining between 4 to 4.5% for the last 3 to 4 years, and that could be one benchmark if you want to look at it. Mr. Bhav sir wanted to know whom to approach for energy audit or water audit. Of course, we in CII do a lot of such studies. If you're interested, you will find my contact details on the last slide of this presentation. Feel free to let me know. I could direct the concerned people to talk to you and take it forward. There was one question on what is the benchmark for rubber industry. Rubber is something which is where we don't have, or at least I am not aware of a specific benchmark. Rubber from different scales. For example, the tire industry has a certain benchmark. I'm not sure of which rubber industry you're talking about, but I don't have a specific value that I can answer on what is the benchmark for rubber industry. There is one question by Anup Sridharan. Are GRI and CDP driving energy efficiency in India? For the benefit of all, GRI is Global Reporting Initiative and CDP is the Carbon Disclosure Project. These two are public reporting systems where companies are actively reporting through the GRI and CDP programs on the various energy efficiency, sustainability and GHG reduction measures which they are carrying out. While GRI and CDP have been largely looked at for reporting, I'm not sure if the energy efficiency is driven because of GRI or CDP today. These are very good platforms where the targets are reported on a public domain, but there are much other larger drivers for energy efficiency in India. The first and foremost driver had been the cost. The cost of energy in India has been one of the highest globally, and therefore for industries to be competitive, it becomes important for them to be energy efficient. The second driver had been certain mandatory schemes like the PAT mechanism for the largest of the Indian companies. 478 of the large Indian companies are a part of the first PAT cycle. First is the cost driver, second is the policy driver. The third also had been in terms of the sector itself. There are certain sectors due to its internal comparison, benchmarking have moved a little forward. I'm sure GRI and CDP are excellent platforms, but maybe these drivers for energy efficiency are maybe prominent or key drivers than GRI or CDP today. There was one question by Mr. Das Mohapatra. Which sector is more prominent in adopting technology? And each sector has been having certain examples where they have been pioneers in adopting technology. For example, this is happening in fertilizer, this is happening in iron and steel, in cement, this is happening in paper, this is happening in power plants. each sector has been, there are certain examples in each of these sectors where companies have been pioneers in uh, adopting latest technologies. There is one question by Mr. Jitendra Namdev or Samir Tamboli, who is asking, is there any online help on energy efficiency from BEE or CII? Yes, there are. Bureau of Energy Efficiency has a website called Energy Manager Training, which the purpose of the website was to share knowledge and information. You will find a lot of case studies and examples which you could adopt. CII also has an energy efficiency forum in My CII. I would strongly encourage you to register yourself there. Use this forum to share your views or seek questions or clarifications from other experts who are available. Yes, there are forums where online help is available. There is one question by Gagan Srivastav on, is there any study being carried out on the net positiveness or net negativeness of the PAT scheme? I'm not sure if there is anything called a net negativeness that comes out of a PAT scheme, because a PAT scheme is primarily looking at helping companies reduce their energy consumption. It is a small, it is a mechanism, a policy mechanism which encourages companies to become more efficient. And at the end of it, except that there would be some additional investments that would be going from the few companies which otherwise would not invest. I'm sure for a country as a whole, this is a very, very positive step. This is a very good policy mechanism. And at the end of it, the companies would benefit, the country at large would benefit because of a lower energy consumption. It would significantly go a long way in terms of the country's commitment for lowering its greenhouse gas emission, or in terms of ensuring the energy security. From more aspects than one, this has a net positive impact than a negative impact. So that is my take on the PAT scheme. There was one comment or suggestion from Chaitanya Joshi. The CII take up sugar sector. Yes, we have been working very active on sugar sector. We have done a lot of manuals, a lot of energy audits, a lot of case studies on sugar sector. They're all available with CII. So if there is any increased interest, please let us know. I'd be happy to share the work that we're doing in sugar sector. Mr. Koteshwar Rao wanted to know, is there any forum for Chinese plant users in India? I'm not sure what that means, sir. But yeah, as far as forums are considered for various sectors, yes, they are available either in CII's website or BEE, or in many of the other forums. You will find forums available. But I'm not sure if there is any specific forum for Indian plants who is using Chinese technology. I'm not too sure about it. There was a question by Samir Tamboli, where is detailed information available on RPO? You could definitely find more information on the MNRE's website, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. You have a lot of information available on RPO on this website. So these are, of course, there was one comment on from Gopinath Jayaraman saying that this webinar has been useful. Request you to organize more such programs. Definitely, we would try to do that. If we will try to do more such programs. If there is any specific area of interest, specific area that you would want us to discuss in detail, please feel free to let us know. We would definitely try to see if we have the expertise available internally to do such a webinar for the benefit of all. So are these the questions? One question on what do you think is the readiness of Indian companies to adopt software to track, monitor, and take action by Anup Sridharan. Companies are forthcoming. Companies are aware today that the more data they have, the more would be their preparedness for taking corrective actions. And again, depending on the type of the company in the sector, the type of the involvement, the type of energy intensiveness, the investment that is going in adopting software to track, monitor, and take action is varying. Certain sectors which are energy intensive and which depend a lot on advanced automation, control, and reporting systems do heavily invest. But certain sectors where it is not so highly energy intensive, or where the operations are more batch in operation rather than a continuous operation, there the investment has been relatively lower, and therefore my answer there would be, it again depends on the company, depends on the sector, depends on what value addition the software would bring in for their operations, how this would make better. And I'm sure once this value is seen, the companies are ready to invest. There is one question on why the power for agriculture continues to remain free. I think that is beyond the scope of this webinar. That is more of I don't know, either the political reasons or the reasons of that state or sector rather than energy efficiency improvement. So therefore, maybe I would prefer not to answer that. There was one question or comment by Mr. Krishnakant Gupta. We would like to hear CII on designated sector-wise different energy efficient technologies. I'm sure we can do that. We can have a similar webinar on certain energy intensive sectors, and all the 8 sectors where which are covered under the first patch cycle. CII has been involved with them at various levels. We have been involved in several technology compendiums and several of the best practices and case studies. We'd be happy to do that. Thanks for your comment. One question on, does CII have any partnership with software companies for energy reporting, tracking, and monitoring by Mr. Mohapatra? No, we don't exclusively have a partnership for such programs, but we do work with a lot of companies in terms of sharing our knowledge, our expertise on energy efficiency for their activities. But on energy reporting, tracking, and monitoring, no, we don't work exclusively with any software company per se. The next comment was, is there any quality related program, any webinar that's coming up? I would encourage you to please register with my CII, keep a track of the kind of webinars that are happening. There are a lot of webinars that are happening. Please track the schedule through my CII, and I'm sure you would know about the webinar with sufficient notice. We might have another 2 to 3 minutes before we close at 12:30. So if there are any questions, we're available to answer them. There is again a question on which hot water generators are more efficient? Is it LPG or electric? In terms of efficiency or in terms of the energy that is utilized for doing it, electric is always efficient. The electrical application is definitely much better. But when somebody looks at it in terms of cost, the cost of electrical energy would definitely be much higher than the LPG. So in terms of energy efficiency, if somebody is looking purely from the amount of energy that is transferred from electrical heaters to water, definitely electric is more efficient. But if somebody is looking at it from cost efficiency also, cost economics in energy efficiency, I'm sure LPG would be more useful. There were a few questions on the contact details. You will find them in this slide. You will find the email address, website, where you will find a lot of information on many of the case studies, many of the publications that CII brings out on a regular basis on energy efficiency could either be downloaded from greenbusinesscenter.com or from CII.in in the publications section. Please feel free to visit these websites for downloading the presentations. So if there are no further questions, I take this opportunity to thank you. Thank you for your interest in this webinar. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for the questions that followed it to make this discussion more lively. Should there be anything that is either left out, unanswered, or if there is anything where you need more information, please feel free to contact us on either the telephone numbers or emails that have been provided. We would be happy to add whatever information we could. This webinar would be available for download from my CII website. Please feel free to download it and view it at any later point in time if there are certain things of interest to you. So with this, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your patience, and thanks for your participation. Thank you.